Mr. George Cook. Mr. Cook, if you can come forward. Mr. Cook is an expert as far as noise ordinances, and this board has been wrestling with the possibility of noise ordinances for the last few years, and does have one on in the being considered right now. So, Mr. Cook, I'd like to welcome you and let you just tell us a little bit about it, and then maybe take some questions from the board.
Excuse me. For the record, it's Dr. Cook, and
okay, I'm glad to hear that.
I don't usually pull that one, but in a professional setting, it should be there. I suppose you want to know something about my background?
Yes, sir.
Well, I am an occupational audiologist and a senior consultant with a company called Workplace Integra, and their primary, for the last 45 years, what I've done is visit manufacturing plants and conducted noise surveys and provided all the services that the manufacturing company would need to be able to run a successful hearing conservation program under whatever statutes or ordinances that they've got. The mining has MSHA, the manufacturing has OSHA. There are federal guidelines for railroads, and so there's a variety of different standards for different types of industries. So that's what my function was. I was vice president since I was 32, and then I started my own company in 2000. And I sold that company in 2006 and retired to Meadowview Estates in Witt County. And there I met Joe Hale and out of Meadowview, and Ken Hayes through the Road Club.
All right. I'll start off with the first question. Is there any one clear way to have a noise read to say that's abusive to someone? Is it all like you could say decibel 6 and anything above that? Or?
You know, I went back and I did some work with the city, with Blacksburg 30 years ago. I also did some work for, I had to conjure these things up for Chapel Hill, City of Chapel Hill, which had a pretty good noise ordinance, and but these ordinances are all over the internet. I mean, this is not an innovative or creative thing that you're doing. I mean, most cities, have some type of ordinance for noise. A lot of them mention property line, and a lot of them mention 45 and 50 decibels, and most of them will give you a time period, especially at night. There is a specialized reading. If you go into a plant with a noise meter, a dosage meter, to find out how much dose an individual has for noise exposure, you'll do the measurement for 8 hours, because that's the typical work shift. When you do environmental studies like airports, you do what's called day-night studies. So you put a dosimeter in the area, and the meter will measure a full 24 hours, but it penalizes that measurement an extra 10 units of 10 decibels from about, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's from about 10 till 8 in the morning, because that's when people sleep. Also, in some of these ordinances, I noticed they're talking about at the property line 45 decibels. Now, if you go in the middle of a field with a sound level meter and your birds chirping, whatever goes on, that's about 40 decibels. 40 decibels is about what you would, that's what you would hear if you were standing in a field without any without any environmental, other than environmental noise. And then 55 decibels is considered sleep interference. So we had a case one time where a church had an air conditioner and it was next to an apartment where the lady had her bedroom, and the whole point was, is it over 55 decibels, which would be sleep interference. So those are usually usually the concepts that are worked in is some penalty for noise, additional noise at night, and then of course you're usually working with levels about 45 decibels, 55 decibels, because of sleep interference. I don't know how, you want me to explain a decibel? What, a relative loudness level to you?
If you give a couple of examples.
Yeah.
Well, the very faintest tone a human can hear at 1,000 cycles is 0 decibels. And a bell is actually a measurement of twice the loudness. But when they started to do measurements, they found it was too gross a measurement, so they broke it into tenths and started calling it decibels. So the measurement of sound then is done on decibels, and the scale usually runs from about 100 to 146. 146, and you instantly lose hearing at 146. And at 0 decibels, that's the least amount of energy that you can hear. That's about like a mosquito landing. That much energy would be about like a mosquito landing on your skin. 20 decibels is a whisper. 40 decibels is background outside in the field. 50 to 55 decibels is speech. 75 is a busy office. 90, at 80, you can create temporary hearing loss. At 90, then you've got regulations that fall into place at 85 and 90 to prevent people. At 90, you have to yell at someone even though you're 12 foot from their ear. And 100 decibels, 110 I think is the threshold of discomfort, 120 is the threshold of pain, and 140, 46, and you lose hearing instantly.
Well, I guess what we're looking at certainly is not so much hearing loss and things like that, which you would dealt with in factories, I know, and setting up the meters long term and that sort of thing. We're looking more at I guess at annoyance levels, because we've had people complain that they can they're sitting in their house and have to turn the TV up because something is going on that they that they can't hear the TV. So if something is loud enough outside, I guess that they can hear it. There is to use a decibel meter inside someone's home or business or whatever. I know that I think the state requires that we have one that is calibrated or certified by the Justice Department. I don't completely understand that one, but we do. But I guess one thing that we're looking at is, if you were in your home, what would be a level that that would be considered annoyance?
Well,
I know that, and I realize I'm asking a little bit of a subjective question.
Well, it's not I hear your question. Whether I answer it well enough, I don't know. Well, it's a good question from where you folks said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the city of Roanoke does not mention any noise levels in their noise ordinance. They just say that if it's harmful or disturbing, etc. Yet the city of Chapel Hill gives 45 and 50 decibels at the property line. And but the rules are 55 is sleep interference. Right. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is if you're standing in a field, you're going to get 40 decibels. That's what. And if you turn on your radio at a quiet listening background level, I always thought it was interesting that at that level you would turn it at about 40 decibels, quiet, which simulates background noise in an open field. So, but if I come along and I want to talk, and the radio is on, I will raise my voice about 3 to 6 decibels, let's say 5 decibels above background. So that would be rule number 2. So if you've got a television on and you want to be able to hear the television, if it's not 5 dB below background, then it's going to be an annoyance. All right. And the other thing, the last rule, the third rule would be 55 decibels is normal conversational speech. So if I'm going to turn my television on, I'm going to want it comfortably at about 55 decibels with no background noise. So consequently, I would think that if someone was watching television and they had a disturbance that interfered with their television, it's going to be in their house over 60 decibels, 60, 65, 70 decibels, because that's going to interfere with their communication or their ability to understand speech.
Well, one thing that we're struggling with a little bit is the interpretation and the enforcement. And I know that you said that Roanoke does not have decibel levels.
No, they have a noise ordinance, but they don't.
Noise ordinance, but so that
It can be done without levels.
Well, but that also that makes it totally subjective. You know, and Chapel Hill, you said had had an objective, level,
and an objective measure.
And I think that that's another thing we're we're struggling with is can we write if we do it an effective ordinance that is enforceable subjectively. Is it much better to do it objectively? Which I kind of fall under that opinion, but I don't know.
Well, if you did it objectively, you would have to say what distance. Let's see. Well, they're mentioning about property lines. I'm trying to think. You would. I mean, you can buy a simple sound level meter that probably runs less than, I'm going to say $300 to $500, including, and you have to have a calibrator to go with that, because you don't want to write a citation and not have the instrument calibrated. And then annually you have to have that calibrated, because that's a manufacturer's recommendation. So, probably for $500–600 or so, you could have the equipment that you could do a measurement. So if you do a measurement, though, then you need to specify where you're going to do that measurement. Is it in the house? Is it where people are sitting? Is it 6 foot from the tailpipe, directly behind the vehicle? Because I'm going to suppose you could also have restrictions on mufflers and that type of thing. They're too loud. So you'd have to do those are the things you'd have to nail down, but it's done all the time.
Sir, let me ask you, in your opinion, because you've worked with this, a noise ordinance is more effective if you do have decibel levels? I do not know.
Okay. I'm going to put that one up front. I just looked through here and looked at several different ordinances, and I thought that it was interesting that Roanoke City had some noise levels down, and that most all the others that I saw did. So I thought that was an interesting option.
Well, but if noise that interferes with hearing levels are structured so that it's on decibels, I would think that an annoyance level would be better if it were defined by decibel levels too. But
I wouldn't be afraid to write annoyance. I wouldn't. As a group, you shouldn't be intrepid about writing a noise ordinance because of the ability to measure the sound. That's a simple, straightforward, economic thing to do. You're just not used to the terminology, and you're not used to the steps or the procedures that make you. We do a lot of legal work, So when you do the legal work, you've got to have all your ducks in a row, so you're just not used to where the ducks go, but I wouldn't be intimidated by that. I mean, you should have a noise ordinance, and you've got a lot of options in the way that you can write your ordinance, and it's not reinventing the wheel. So I would encourage you to do it, not be afraid of it, and help you any way that I can.
Yes, sir, Joe.
George, first, thank you for being here. We're lucky
And sure,
you live here. Would it seem reasonable to you, because we're roughly discussing this, because I happen to believe we need a scientific measure. Because if a deputy or the officer, one might have better hearing than others, as we all do. So at the point of complaint, would 55 decibels be unreasonable?
well, Joe, you know, you've got all kinds of, now, I mean, let's set aside, it's not that simple, it's 55. Are they trying to sleep? Are these people trying to sleep? 55 is too much. If it's on a highway, 10 foot behind, you know, an automobile with dual mufflers or something, 55 might.
Let's use your house. Few of us know where you live. What would be reasonable for what the railroad does to you? What kind of decibel level you think you have in your house when a train comes off the mountain?
Well, if I don't think that it, I can hear the train, so I'm gonna assume it's somewhere probably around 45 decibels, because I can hear it, but I don't necessarily, but it doesn't interfere with my sleep. So, I'm gonna say probably 45 decibels. Of course, it's quieter in the house, I don't have background noise, but if I'm outside, I can still hear it, so I'd still go with about 45 decibels. That'd be interesting, I'll go home and measure it.
Well, and there's also, I guess you're talking about a train, you know, train comes through and it's gone. If it's a constant noise, yeah, it's a lot more annoying.
Well, I mean, you got other things too. Now, I did a study at the city of Charlotte, and they were going to put a, old people